Welcome back to the ITV Sport YouTube channel. You may or may not have seen the Queen's stage in La Route d'Occitanie last night, where Egan Bernal claimed the stage victory, went into the general classification lead, putting 10 seconds into teammate the Russian Pavel Sivakov and 17 seconds ahead of another Russian, Aleksandr Vlasov. But the big news is the fact that Egan Bernal finished 5 minutes and 5 seconds ahead of teammate Chris Froome in one of the first real mountain tests for INEOS this season. And in case you haven't seen the profile of the stage with stage 3, it was a genuine mountain stage. There were 3 category 1 climbs, the Porte de Beyrède, 19.2 kilometers at just over 6%, Col de Beyrède, which you'll be familiar with if you've watched the Tour de France. Chris Froome attacked on the back of that in 2016, I believe, 10 Ks at 7.5% average gradient. And then it was a mountaintop finish. I think one of the first times this climb has ever been used. It looked very narrow, goat track-like, the Col de Beyrède. Given that the first 2 stages were pretty much sprinter stages, there were a few hills. The sprinters were leading the general classification. Brian Coquard was wearing the leader's jersey, riding for B&B Hotels Vital Concept, and Sonny Colbrelli and Viviani second and third. Egan Bernal was probably the best placed of the genuine GC guys, 16 seconds behind Brian Coquard. And make sure you like the video down below if you like the breakdown that's about to follow. It was the dead of night. There were no images really available of La Route d'Occitanie last night when I filmed this. But I'll try and piece together for you what happened on the climb. And Tony Koner on Twitter took this, and it shows Pavel Sivakov driving Egan Bernal, Aleksandr Vlasov for Astana, and Thibaut Pinot in the latter section of the climb. I think this was with under 2 Ks or so to go. And it's Sivakov, the Russian, on the front, Egan Bernal sitting on his wheel second, Aleksandr Vlasov, who I think might be the current Russian national champion, third wheel riding for Astana. Next thing we know, thanks to Lisa Mouloir on Instagram, Egan Bernal launches. You know I don't like to go too overboard with my titles on videos, but I think this is quite literally a thermonuclear attack from Egan Bernal, and we'll try and reverse engineer the watts per kilo he did on this climb at the back end of this video. Maybe 10 seconds behind him was the duo of Pavel Sivakov and Aleksandr Vlasov, the 2 Russians, and it always amazes me how much you can gather from a race just from a 4-second clip. We can see Vlasov is trying to chase back Egan Bernal in vain. Sivakov, who'd been pulling for Egan Bernal for an extended period of time and pretty much dropped all the GC guys, including Pinot, Romain Bardet, etc. Once Bernal attacked, Sivakov took a short rest and then sat on Vlasov's wheel, and we can see right at the end of this clip, he's attacking Aleksandr Vlasov. So a massive result for Sivakov, getting the 1-2 with Egan Bernal, and despite his efforts pulling Bernal up the climb, he only finished 10 seconds behind him. So Sivakov's almost at the same level as Bernal. Thibaut Pinot finished another 30 seconds behind Egan Bernal, maybe 35 seconds back. He got dropped when Sivakov was pulling his turn. Then it was an even bigger gap to Romain Bardet, who, quite frankly, I don't think he should go for GC or try to contest it at all this year. The Tour field is absolutely stacked. It's going to be really difficult to even crack the top 10 in this year's Tour de France. So I think Romain Bardet should go for stage wins, just like his French compatriot riding for Total Direct Energy, who you can see here, Lilian Carmejean, who I think won a stage in 2017. Really good rider. You'll see him, no doubt, at the Tour de France as well as, hopefully, Benoit Cosnefroy. Now, I think he won the Under-23 Road World Championships. Get your little black book out, write his name down. He's going to win a big one-day race this year. I think he's a really, really good rider, and good to see him having a sense of humour, waving to everybody on the end of this climb. Probably not a day for him in the mountains. But apart from Egan Bernal and Sivakov going absolutely ham on this climb, the other story linked to that is Chris Froome, who you can see here in the latter stages of the climb. I wouldn't say he's sitting up. He looks like he's still concentrating and trying to go as quick as he can. He finished 5 minutes and 5 seconds behind Egan Bernal. We'll talk a bit more about what that means, or what I think that means, in a second. But pulling up the rear was Brian Coquard wearing the leader's jersey. You'll see Egan Bernal wearing that jersey tonight. He's gone into the lead of the general classification. But how quickly did they actually go up this climb? Now, the VAM I saw was about 1600 to 1700, and apparently they had a bit of a headwind. So that means they're putting out pretty good numbers despite this being the first mountain stage after a big layoff. So let's take a look at Aleksandr Vlasov's Strava file and his power data from this ride. Shout out to Charlie for linking me this activity. I couldn't find it for love nor money. I presume Charlie has an alternate Cyrillic keyboard that he keeps to find Russian riders' Strava activities. You can see on the elevation profile, bit of a brute of a day, and they did the first climb, as you can see, not full gas. I think it was like 5.2 watts per kilo. The second climb ramped up a little bit more. You can see in Vlasov's file here. And then the third climb, they really hit it. This is pretty much the entirety of the climb, 27 minutes, averaged just under 400 watts. I think if I topped and tailed it properly, it'd be about bang on 400 watts. Vlasov is listed at 66 kilos. So watts per kilo was about 6.05 watts per kilo for Vlasov. Now, I'm not entirely sure that's his exact weight. There was a headwind on the climb as well. That gave a VAM of 1683. And on the steeper section, just before Sivakov attacked him and he couldn't follow, he did 6.4 watts per kilo for 10 minutes. So they were sitting in the wheels on the SkyTrain at the outset of the climb. For the first half of the climb, he wasn't doing as much power, maybe 5.6, 5.7 watts per kilo. But then in the last part of the climb, when it really ramped up following those Bernal and Sivakov efforts, he was doing 6.4, 6.5 watts per kilo with surges. And when I was watching this video on the Astana YouTube channel the other day, it reminded me of how good Aleksandr Vlasov has been this year. And I don't want to pat myself on the back too much because it was kind of obvious after Tour de la Provence, but he came second or third behind Nairo Quintana when Nairo destroyed the stage to Chalet-Renard in Tour de la Provence up Mont Ventoux earlier this year, and Vlasov did really, really high watts per kilo. He's obviously kept working hard over lockdown, and that's a massive result for him, coming third behind Egan Bernal and Sivakov, and not too far behind them either, and ahead of Thibaut Pinot. But what does this mean for Chris Froome, leadership at INEOS? Is Egan Bernal going to be the leader? What about Geraint Thomas, who isn't even at this race? And what's inarguable is that Chris Froome was definitely working for Sivakov and Bernal on this stage. Is Froome just using this race to get some training in? I think Froome admitted in the interview after the race that, yeah, Bernal is probably on a better level than him at the moment. So on that line of thinking, there's really not too much you can read into this stage. It made sense that he finished 5 minutes back because he was pulling on the front earlier on the climb. And I guess the other side of looking at this is, why is Chris Froome pulling on the front for Pavel Sivakov and Egan Bernal? The Tour de France is not that far away, like 25, 26 days away. 29th of August it starts. That's not a lot of time for Chris Froome to radically improve his level to be competing with Sivakov and Egan Bernal. So if he's having to work as a domestique for them in La Route d'Occitanie, then it's pretty unlikely he's going to be able to improve in the next 3 weeks enough to genuinely contest GC leadership. And personally, I agree with that line of thinking. I don't think Chris Froome is going to be genuinely contesting GC at this year's Tour de France. I've been saying that for quite a while. If you look at the odds that moved straight after the conclusion of this stage 3, Chris Froome's odds blew out and drifted massively because obviously people were reading into what happened in this stage as indicative of what is going to happen in the Tour de France in 3 to 4 weeks. But we want to hear from you. Comment down below. Do you think I'm reading too much into this stage and Chris Froome's condition and where he finished versus Egan Bernal? Or do you agree that there is something to it and what we see at the Tour de France is going to be something similar to what we saw at La Route d'Occitanie last night? Remember that if you're in the UK, you can watch the Tour de France live on ITV4 from the 29th of August. There's a highlights package in the evening as well. And remember to like the video down below. It really helps the channel out a lot. And subscribe if you want to see my Tour de France stage analysis videos during the Tour de France this year. But I hope you're well. Hope you enjoyed this video. Ciao.